So this morning I was trying to find a video on the vagus nerve, which I couldn't find one that I liked, so I thought I'd make my own video. And the vagus nerve is the largest part of your parasympathetic nervous system, which is essentially your body's ability to relax. You have your sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight, flight, freeze response. So like when you're really stressed out, that's in full gear. And when you calm down, your parasympathetic nervous system takes over, and it has its own slang term of rest and digest. And in that title, it suggests that when you relax, when you slow your breathing, when your heart rate drops back down, the other systems of your body are able to work at a higher capacity, which allows the body's natural healing capabilities to take into effect. So when we use the vagus nerve, there's many ways to use the vagus nerve to activate the parasympathetic nervous system to calm the body down. But one of the most interesting aspects about the vagus nerve is it starts at your ear. So sound really does affect the nervous system. So in traditional Tibetan yoga and meditation and philosophy, they use singing bowls to help with meditation. And singing bowls are great on multiple levels in that it gives you, that's Gus in the background playing with his toy. It gives you something to focus on more than just the breath to help shift the state of the body. And so when you shift the parasympathetic nervous system into a more relaxed state, it then gives the brain the okay to go ahead and shift its brain waves. So when we shift our brain waves, we then change the reality in which we are perceiving the world. And there's different brain waves, but essentially the most healing state for our body to be in and our brain waves to be in, and we can't always be there 100% of the time, is between awake and asleep. So you might have been falling asleep and then suddenly you wake up from a noise and you're like, I wasn't really asleep, but I wasn't really awake. That's the kind of the area that we talk about with meditation as far as it comes to healing traumatic events, is when you can enter that space, then you are able to kind of revisit things or address subconscious things that are going on and release them in a way that any other brainwave or any other state of being, it's much harder to do. And so the singing bowls help take us into that state. There's many other mechanisms, right? Yoga helps us kind of get there, and then we go into it with our meditation practice. But any way that you get into this state, what is really important is, just like if we were going to go to the gym one time and walk on a treadmill, we can't expect to lose a whole bunch of weight. We have to go continually to the gym to lose the weight, and then we have to keep going to the gym in order to keep the weight off. So it's the same with our emotional body, essentially, that if we are able to first find that place and figure out, our body's able to figure out, okay, this is how we get to this place of healing, and then we practice getting there, eventually you can just sit, breathe, and get there on your own. But it's that practice, building that mental muscle. So I just got back from the gym and I was thinking about the differences between yoga and a traditional workout, because sometimes people view yoga as a workout, and that is partly true. If you keep practicing yoga, you'll find that its end goal is to build awareness. So if you are someone who is really interested in working out, it can be great because it can help build that body awareness. So when you go in, and whether it's you're doing cardio or whether you're doing weights or whatever it is you do for your physical workout, you can become more aware of how your body is positioned in those shapes, so that you don't have to do as much. You can do kind of less with more intention, right? It's work harder, work smarter, not harder, is the same concept. So yoga helps to build that awareness, and so we do get physical benefits of strengthening and flexibility, but ultimately we are building that awareness of, like, are my knees tracking over my toes when I'm in my squat, or like, right, for in yoga, like we would be thinking about our lunge, or right, our goddess squat. The concept of impermanence When we get caught up in our life, which happens, we tend to develop this sense that things will stay the same and things won't change. But that's very far from the truth, as we all know when we actually sit down and think about it. Just like the coffee handle on my mug here, it's gone. I was a little sad when it left, but it's still a functional mug and I can still drink out of it. And this is what's really great about meditating or doing a mindful-based practice, is that it recenters you and you center with the moment. So you feel your breath flow in and out, and there is a rhythmic permanence there because the breath is always present, but there is this concept of each breath is a little bit different in texture and rhythm, in movement, in emotion, and we start to sense that experience of impermanence and becoming okay with it and accepting of it. So I was meditating before yoga on Sunday, and I had this thought come into my mind of, as within the mind, so within the body, and as within the body, so within the mind. And we often think that we use our brains cognitively to think, and there's truth to that. But if you look at a diagram of the nerves, our spine connects our brain to the rest of our body. So, right, if we put our hand over a stove, our hand's gonna start hurting because our nerves are signaling to our brain that, hey, don't do that. And then our brain signals back down to the hand, move that hand away. And so we think with our body as much as we think with our head. And in our head, in our brain, there's little areas designated to our fingers and every part of the body. And when we go through life, we have habitual patterns, whether those are habitual thought patterns or habitual movement patterns, habitual activities, ways we sit, certain hips we favor when we're waiting in line at the grocery store. And over time, that creates a story and a narrative. And yoga gives us time and space to unwind and see, what is this narrative? And not just yoga, right? Reiki does it in a similar way, as well as sound does it in a slightly different way. They all have their own little unique approach that can target specific areas and work specifically well for different people based on your needs and your goals and so forth. But I think it's really important that we understand that our brain is not just like this thing isolated over here. Like, everything is connected with one another and it's constantly communicating. And if we find ourselves in a place where we're really have a spinning mind, moving, when we can find ourselves in our body and anchor ourselves down here, then that helps the mind kind of unwind because we look at what's going on from a different perspective. And in yoga, that's why the breath is so key, because the breath helps us get out of those natural roaming tendencies. As a worker in the wellness field, I felt there was something that needed to be addressed about the term wellness. I feel like it often gets watered down in the sense that, oh yeah, that's a great thing, but it's just kind of like a luxury practice or a luxury thing for somebody to do, and it doesn't have as much substance as, say, Western medicine. But I think we need to reframe this concept of wellness into, it's really Eastern medicine, and it's medicine that's been practiced for centuries and has been time and true. It just operates from a different approach. So like, Western medicine is very pinpointed in how it operates, and Eastern medicine is more big picture approach. And I found this article on a government website. It's the National Library for Medicine. I have some notes here. I don't have all this in my head. And it's a really interesting article about stress and how stress interacts with your immune system. And right, it does address that some short-term stress is a positive thing, but it's really that chronic long-term stress that starts to impact our bodies and our minds, and can be really detrimental long-term. So one example is what it said about chronic stress, or you could also kind of label it with the term burnout, is a popular term now. So when we have a lot of stress long term and we don't take time to have the nervous system kick back into that rest and digest state, it leads to illness because it impacts the immune system in a negative way. So the article mentioned that an example of this is it can lead up to plaque buildup in the arteries, which is not a good thing, as well as it can also not just physically impact you, but it can also impact your psychiatric health. So it can lead to conditions such as neurosis, depression, and schizophrenia. And so back to Western versus Eastern medicine. Western medicine has this overarching approach that's going to look at stress in general, and kind of look at the body as a complete picture, mind, body, and spirit. So for, say, with Western medicine, you might have a digestive issue and then you would go see a specific doctor for that. And then maybe you also have some sort of talk therapy that you're interested in doing and you would go see a specific different doctor for that. With Eastern medicine, it's more of an overall approach, and right, you might see multiple different Eastern medicine modalities, but they're really going to be focusing mostly on that stress factor and how the different interactions of the body play together. So like your mental therapy that you're working on might also be connected with your digestive. And so the Eastern medicine kind of looks at the whole picture versus Western medicine likes to dissect. And there's really not a right or wrong way. It's really up to the individual to decide what is best for you. And I think with health, the most important thing is looking at a situation from multiple angles. So if you are dealing with a problem, trying multiple methods, right? You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, having a menu and using your menu of techniques to ultimately find a health plan that works for your body and your lifestyle.